With Stardew Valley being as big of a game as it is, you'd have to expect a fair bit of content and ideas that simply did not make the cut for the final game. From entire events to some dialogue that just didn't make it in, today we'll be going over the cut content of Stardew Valley.
Allow me to show you something.
As if the egg hunt couldn't get any more useful or interesting, we have some dialogue from the wizard during the egg hunt. The dialogue says, but what about raw lizard eggs sprinkled with blackened marrow? I don't think this has any particular significance, just a fun Easter egg. But this is not where it ends. The creator of the Reddit post also did some more exploring, and they found some interesting stuff. It seems like the egg hunt was originally supposed to be much bigger and have a larger search radius because there are some eggs found by the Swing Setting Community Center. The map is also slightly different, with the ice cream stand missing, the fence by Lewis's house slightly different, and the minecart and furnace by the blacksmith's house slightly different also. Some things also by the playground are also gone for some reason, like benches, etc. According to the OP, these changes are present in every single festival. Spirits Eve. I've already talked about this in my Arsberg video, but as usual, at every event, the wizard is standing out of bounds and has some cool dialogue that includes, "The affair of mundane folk matter little to me, but the elementals like a chance to see you up close." And, "It was for them I built this silly little maze." I assume the first message is talking to Linus, and the maze is for the mundane folk, like me, you, and the town folks. Linus then responds, "Good show, old friend." Outside the normal play area, you can see that the Jojo Mart is gone for some reason, and the Hat Mouse is in its place. I'm personally fine with this change, and I wouldn't mind it stayed like that. The mayor's truck is also gone for some reason. The Dance of the Moonlight Jellies. Not too much is different during the Dance of the Moonlight Jellies, but there is a random glowing spot that you can exit the festival from for some reason. Kind of weird, but I mean, what isn't in this game? The Festival of Ice. During the Festival of Ice, we have a normal special message from the wizard, this time saying, "Sneaking off to visit my weird tower? You're odd for a mundane." A couple other things of note are missing, like the Hat Mouse's shop. The Flower Dance. During the Flower Dance, all previous mentioned changes to the map are present, and if you talk to the wizard, slightly above where you entered the map, he gives you some fourth wall breaking dialogue, calling out the player for being out of bounds. A cool little Easter egg and a nice fourth wall break in my opinion. Old character designs. The old character designs are obviously very different, with them being much shorter, more 16-bit-esque, and with a lot simpler shading. Shown here is some gameplay of them doing basic actions like chopping down trees, fishing, etc. Old character portraits. Just some old character portraits that I thought were cool. The people shown here are Haley, Penny, Sebastian, and Elliot. You can see how much the old character models were displayed and the old cutscene style. It's great to see how much the style has evolved over time. We talked about the portraits for the characters, but we also should mention the physical things of how they stand in the game. They obviously look very, very different. I don't really like the style. Maybe that's just me talking because I've already seen the later ones, but they really just rub me the wrong way, honestly. The original intro to Stardew Valley. The modder Ulithium Dragon created a mod that allowed us to see the original bus that was going to be the intro for Stardew Valley. The people on the bus include Haley, a bunch of people we don't recognize, and Dobson. Dobson basically trash talks the people of Stardew Valley and calls them all morons, essentially. According to Concerned Ape, Dobson was originally going to be the villain of Stardew Valley, before he was replaced by Morris. A quote from the comments of a video explaining it says, "Good find! Yes, at one point this was going to be the first scene in Stardew Valley. The idea was to give players a chance to get used to the basic controls and get introduced to Dobson, who was going to be the villain of the game. Dobson was meant to be a ruthless mid-level JoJo employee, willing to do anything to make his way up the corporate ladder. He would be constantly disrespecting you and trying to make your life difficult. I ended up deciding that having a really confrontational bad guy wasn't the feel I wanted. Morris retained some of that ideal though." The rest of the comment wasn't super relevant, so I decided to cut it out. I honestly think that a villain like this would have been really cool and add an interesting dynamic to Stardew, because everyone's so nice in Stardew essentially. Morris isn't super nice, but you barely have to talk to him. So I think a villain like Dobson would have been probably a perfect fit for Stardew Valley in my opinion. But if you feel differently, tell me in the comments down below, and why. Also, I couldn't really find any video footage of this mod, and the mod is out of date and doesn't work in newer versions, and the modder has decided not to update it anymore because he's sick of Stardew Valley. Thank you to Dangerously Funny for providing the video footage showed here. It's also really cool that Concerned Ape, the developer of Stardew Valley, is so engaged in the community and answering questions that otherwise would probably go unanswered in other games. It's really awesome to see that. Also, thank you to ArcaneCraft for reminding me about this intro. I thought I'd make a section on old mechanics, first of which being the ability to butcher animals. I personally agree with the decision to not include this in the game. A lot of people say it was because of the vegan backlash, but I personally don't believe that. I just don't think it's very wholesome to raise animals, like you pet them, they give a little heart above their head, do cute little animations and stuff, then you just slaughter them for meat. I don't know if that really fits with the whole theme of the game in my opinion, but if you feel differently, tell me why. Another old feature that was scrapped was completely randomly generated mines. Essentially, instead of the ladder system, you could blow up walls to find new sections in the mine, and I think that's really cool. But I kind of prefer the ladder system now that I think about it, just because it kind of makes a lot more sense and is very simple, and a lot of players wouldn't have access to bombs early game anyway, so I don't really know how that would work. Old skill tree. As shown in the screenshot, butchering was originally going to be added to the game, but the perk was replaced with Coopmaster, and this is much better in my opinion. Like I said earlier, butchering just doesn't fit the game in my opinion. Old music / unused music. I considered Abe's old blog. I found the old spring music, and it sounds very different to today's, but I honestly really like it personally. This is the current music. This is the old music. Very different clearly, but I honestly really like them both and they each have their own charm. The Summit. This is of course no longer unused, but I thought I would mention it anyways because it was unused for a very long time. What's shown in the screenshots, this post was made back in 2016 by the way, so we didn't know anything about it back then. What's shown is the old path leading up to the mountain, and at the top of the mountain is just a glitchy mess of tiles. Kind of bizarre, very weird to look at, obviously not intended. Another fun fact is that the tiles actually change to the white style during winter, so it's kind of fun. Mine elevators. I don't know exactly how these were supposed to work, but I know you could place them in the mines and they will allow you to transport between the floors really quickly. Obviously that doesn't really make sense now because, well, we have an elevator system every 5 floors, so that kind of replaced the old mine elevator system. But it's kind of an interesting addition. I don't know if you would have had to craft them or like get Robin to build them for you or something like that. But in my opinion, what we have today is way better, so we don't really have to worry about that. Just an interesting piece of history. Dungeon. As you explore the mines, you might be able to find dungeon entrances, and if you manage to fight through the randomly generated dungeons, you could get some cool loot. I personally think this would be a kind of cool idea, but I mean every floor is basically a dungeon now that I think about it. The rocks are the randomly generated part, the ladders and the ores. So we already kind of have it in the game, just in a different form. So yeah, just an old version of the normal mines, I guess. Old weapons. So while browsing the wiki, I found a ton of old weapons that were cut for some reason. Basically all of these weapons are spouse related, with names like Alex's bat, Sam's old guitar, Haley's iron, and Leah's whittler. There are a bunch more of them, I just don't want to list them all out. For some reason, all of them have really weird stats, with some of them giving a buff of 158 speed. That's probably why they were cut from the game, but it's still cool. I guess they could have been items that were used by Eric Baroni to test, like going through the mines really quickly or something. That's my only really guess, I'm not sure. I assume the spouse weapons would have been unlocked at certain heart milestones, or if you were married and unlocked the Skull Caverns, for example. Pretty cool idea, and I wish there were more spouse-specific items like this. Cursed Prairie King Cabinet. So this is basically what it sounds like. It's a cursed copy of Journey of the Prairie King. I have no idea what it means, but it's still cool. This item is not obtainable in-game, of course, because it's cut content, and people only found it because of the CJB cheat menu. I have no idea what cursed means specifically in this context, but maybe it's a really hard version if I had to guess. That's my only guess, basically. The description doesn't help much either, pretty much just stating the obvious by saying, something's not right with this Prairie King cabinet. Other than that, I couldn't find too much on it, but it's just kind of a cool thing. Maybe it would have been a reward for completing the game on a really hard difficulty? I don't know. I'm just speculating at this point. Old build of the game. Shown on screen is a bunch of old designs for stuff like Leah's old cottage, your old farm, the mines, Sebastian's room, the saloon, Pam is still there of course, the skill level up menu, and the inventory. The inventory looks a lot different, just simpler and kind of more washed out color palette. The level up system also seems like it worked way differently. You would gain like overall levels somehow, and you would put those points into each skill instead of just leveling up each skill individually. Not really sure how this would work, but it looks kind of interesting. The game also used to be called Sprout Valley, which is a solid name, just not as cool as Stardew in my opinion. Also, just a fun little thought experiment. Would the star drops have been called Sprout Drops or something? Moving swiftly onwards. Also at one point the mines were going to be 100% procedurally generated with big lakes and stuff like that you could fish in and raft across, which sounds like an interesting gameplay mechanic. And now for the big one, we have the town. Lots of stuff is different, so I'm going to try to go over it and list it all here. First things first, we don't have a way to get to the right side of the town where the blacksmith and museum / library normally is, so the blacksmith is below the Stardrop Saloon and the museum is in the bottom right. A couple of other different things is that the board with the calendar and quest board is moved away from the left of Pierre's door, and the path leading up from the left of the shop is gone. The only way being able to go up is on the right. There's also a bunch of other small changes like bushes, fences, and flower pots being moved. Also, if you're wondering what the source is, it's from an old Stardew Valley blog post, so it's definitely reputable. And at the end of the post, Concerned Ape also mentioned that he might do a live stream sometime playing an older version of the game, which sounds awesome, and I'd really like to see that honestly. Hopefully he does that. That's pretty much all I can find. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below if I missed anything. Or join my Discord and DM me. Or send in the channel, I don't know, anything. Yeah, but thank you for watching guys, see ya.